Hari Om Srimukti.
Hari Om Ganga, lovely to see you again.
Yeah, always lovely to see you. I think it's been a little while since we were together on the video call. And today I wanted to ask you a few questions because I really love getting your perspective. It's always very grounded from that space of being a yoga teacher and a yoga practitioner. But of course, you also have such a vast theoretical, academic, linguistic, scholarly knowledge. Of course, you're a Sanskrit scholar and you worked on the Yoga Upanishads with Swami Satyadharma, which is where we came to develop our friendship. So a great honor, great joy to be with you here today. And thank you for joining in, and the people watching, thank you for joining in.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure if you're going to thank me because I'm starting with the big, probably the most important question. In terms of yoga and Vedanta and Tantra, really the question is around the subject of Om. So I wanted to hear your thoughts, your description on what Om really represents, and the different philosophies related to Om in simple terms. But yeah, I'd love to hear your input there.
Well, now that you mentioned these big topics, yoga, Vedanta, Tantra, none of them would have been, that knowledge would not have been here without Om. So Om, because, and there still is, but it's very hard in our worldly life to imagine a universe or a reality which is absolutely still and silent and beyond the elements and beyond the senses. So maybe once a time there was that before worldly life came into earth, but it's still there. And within that universe was a great power which was unmanifest. And then through that power there came a vibration, and that vibration was Om. So that power was the cause of the divine sound, and it became manifest at Bindu. You all know where Bindu is, which is the transcendental source or origin of all sound. So, and why sound and not sight or touch or anything like that, but sound is the first of the senses because it's in the ether and it moves around, can travel, not like the other senses. So Om is, even though when we say Om, it sounds like one sound, it's actually composed of three sounds, A, U, and always in Sanskrit, when A and U are together, you get the sound O. So I'll just show you, I've got the physical symbol of Om here, if I can just show you that one. So there it is. Everybody can recognize that, and it's very good if...
Lift it up a bit higher. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Actually, it looks really good because it's hiding my face.
Yeah. I was going to say, but now we can't see your face.
No, that's all right. I might leave it here. Anyway. So it's also, get part of each letter, and the three letters are combined into this one symbol. So this is A, and U is the tail of the letter U, and then the three, and they symbolize waking, dreaming, and sleeping. They're our usual three states of consciousness. And then we have up here, the little dot is the Bindu, and this activates the fourth state of consciousness, the transcendental state, which is Turiya, known in Sanskrit as Turiya.
Yeah. And I like what you just, you're mentioning about this fourth one being the echo, because I think a lot of people have understood that description that you gave, but maybe sometimes don't, they know the dot is about Turiya or beyond the normal states of consciousness, but that echo of the yeah. It's very nice to hear that. I think that might be something people haven't, general people haven't heard before. And I would love if you could, I know that, so you mentioned the three, like it's a bit of a trinity, and I know that there are a lot of explanations and philosophies that are drawn into as a trinity, or the trinity in general of creation. Could you share a few words on that?
Yeah, well, one that we all know that everybody does is in pranayama. We have the inhalation of the breath and the retention and the exhalation. So that's one trinity. And those three components of inhalation, retention, and exhalation are said to resonate with these three sounds. Ah, the inhalation, U, that's internal, your attention, and exhalation, and then the three, and then there's the echo, as he said.
Okay, so I know what where my pranayama focus will go for the next few weeks, and I'll get back to you on my.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Another important trinity, well, if you think of the qualities of this unmanifest universe, it was able to create, it was able to maintain, and also transform. So each of these qualities, you've all heard of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, so they represent the qualities of Brahman, which is the unmanifest reality. So Brahma is the creator, Vishnu the preserver or maintainer, and Shiva the transformer. Or some people call it the destroyer, but really it's the transformer, can be
From death comes life. The beginning is the end. And I know that quite a few people have delved into that sort of philosophy about these forces that bring forth, maintain, destroy creation. But do you have some examples to share about, in our own life or the life of a person, how those forces are experienced?
Well, yes, there is the one we can all relate to, is the mother, father, and child. So Brahma, the creation, first there's the creation of the child. Now that doesn't take very long, and that's why. And then there's the maintenance and support of that child, which can go on for 20 years nowadays, or even longer. And I think that's why in India you don't get, there are a few other reasons, but why Vishnu is worshipped more than Brahma, because it's so easy to create something, but actually to maintain it, even if it's, not a child, might be a business.
Everyone's worshipped more than Brahma, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Might have something to do with Saraswati, but that's another story.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, so there are a lot more Vishnu temples. And then Shiva the transformer. So the child goes from baby, child, teenager, adult, and then is transformed into a parent and has to bring another child up through those stages. So yeah, and I think that's why people pray to Shiva a lot. They want the transformation. They can cope with change. That's the way they want it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
Often we don't know what's good for us anyway.
That's right. You have to be willing anyway.
Yeah.
I like that story.
So anyway, that's been a long bit of a discussion about the theory of Om, but how do we actually feel the power of Om?
The practical.
Yeah, to practice it. So we must chant it, prepare ourselves, not just do it sort of thoughtlessly or haphazardly, but we know in a class we do it with great respect. We prepare the body and the atmosphere and so on. And then we can chant it breathing in deeply. That inhalation is so important. And where do we feel it? So not necessarily just in the mind, although there's a connection there where we've heard or read the explanation, but in the heart chakra. So anahata meaning the unstruck sound. So it's a sound that's produced by itself, just like the heart, the physical heart pumps blood by itself. Blood pumps the life force through the body by itself. And also, anahata literally means the inner sound, which is not produced by the friction of two objects. Yeah, so anahata is the center of bhakti or devotion and emotions, and connected with the brain, parts of the brain that's responsible for the creative arts.
Feeling.
Yeah.
And of course, the center of the soul, the jivatma.
Yeah. In fact, we know this is not just theory, because there have been examples of people who've had heart transplants, and they've continued on some of the activities of the person, who had the heart they got. So there was one story about somebody who'd never had any, proficiency, ability, never learnt any sort of music, and had a heart transplant from somebody who was actually a brilliant composer and who had been composing a piece of music and then died before he finished. And this other person who got the heart continued composing that piece of music. It's just amazing. I mean, can you just, I need a new heart, I'll go into a second-hand shop, get a heart, and then become a brilliant composer or artist or something like that.
To pick the right heart, don't you? A little background. Samskara check first. Yeah. So I think also it's, it's really when you develop the depth of practice with mantra, you do naturally start to come and rest in the heart. There's that natural coming down into the heart space, that natural benevolence and peace that you're drawn to as any mantra practice develops. So it does make sense that, a lot of those ancient practices focusing on Om in the heart lotus, that's where this unstruck sound exists and is heard. And I know that for myself and for many people that there's a real process with mantra sadhana. And often, you know, when you first start, you're not in the heart space. You're not seeing and feeling and in the lotus and absorbed in that transcendental vibration. You're oscillating in the mind and you're repeating the mantra as though it's in the mouth and the throat. You know, it's very mental, and you're getting the thoughts come over, and spontaneously you might clear the way and ride along awareness and mantra. And then it starts to develop into the subtle body. The mind becomes very quiet and spacious, you know, when it's the effect of the mantra. And you experience that mantra as prana and subtle prana, light, vibration, you know, and you develop that awareness is refined, and the experience of mantra is much more subtle. It's not mental, it's much more subtle. And then I think after that, you start to get some of those glimpses and moments lost in time, you know, where you're in this space. And that's where you really come closer to this type of practice that you're talking about easily, but that is quite deep, you know, like the very best in Om at Anahat, the unstruck sound.
So the thing is, it sounds so simple. Yeah, but something simple can be very deep and useful as well. I mean, when I think how much time some people spend like researching their family history, you know, what their great-great-great-grandfather, was he a king or a criminal or whatever, and, or going to psychics to find out what their past lives were, and, you know, that sort of thing, where really through Om there is this shortcut to our origin and the origin of all our ancestors and past lives as well, going back right to the source. And I have noticed also, you know, even in my classes, which weren't really that big, everybody was from different backgrounds. And after a certain amount of Om chanting, and then there was, the silence was so deep, and yet there was this feeling of unity between everybody. So
yeah, it's palpable. And even starting practices or starting classes with Om, even if it's not the focus at the beginning of the class and it's just opening with 3 Oms, it immediately has a harmonizing effect on the group and the environment. And yeah, look, I mean, it's why the question is asked, because all you need is Om. You know, everything is contained in Om. And if only we would, you know, do an Om a day and keep the doctor away and really start to develop this practice. I mean, nobody can do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. That's the thing. But
yeah,
it's all there, and there are so many side benefits along the way, the tranquil mind, and you know, there are so many side benefits, and often we get caught up in those. But actually the purpose of yoga and Vedanta and Tantra is to come to that realization of knowledge that comes through unification, that comes through expansion. And we have these tools, these ancient practices, like Om, that are really, you know, the system for helping us with that. And I think I'd love to talk to you in our next video. I think I know what the next question will be, and I'd love to maybe discuss some of these ancient practices that do relate to Om, you know, in the lotus of the heart, just to talk about that a little bit more, because they're so subtle. And even if we're familiar with Anahat and with Om, we might not be familiar with that subtlety that the ancients had, and we might not experience that ourselves, but it's so inspiring to get a glimpse into that and to know where we're going, you know, in our own way. So so write that down. We'll talk about the Om in Anahat in our next video.
Yeah, I just have one more little thing to say, is that in the Yoga Tattva Upanishad, there's several verses on Om. And even though they don't mention power in those verses, that's why Swami Satchidharma gave them all the general title, The Power of Om, which explained it all. The power, which, if we can harness that power, brings us back to the pure consciousness, our true self. So, Hari Om.
Om, Hari Om, Srimukti. Thank you for joining me, and for those watching, always a delight, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, let's. Thank you. Bye.